Hey guys, I'm Rebecca Banks, coming to you from my kitchen in Brooklyn, and I'm here to do a little Wine 101 talk with you. Tonight I'm so excited because I'm going to talk about Burgundy. Burgundy is one of my favorite regions in France. It's sort of smack in the middle of the country. So it's not near an ocean, it's not near a lake, there's some small rivers, but it's pretty much continental, right in the center of France. And Burgundy is, in a way, kind of a very quiet, very honest, very anti-big city kind of area. And the wines, I feel like, are kind of like that. They're not flashy, they're not trying to be something they're not. They're very simple. Pretty much in Burgundy, you're working with two grape varietals. You're working with Pinot Noir for red wines and Chardonnay for white wines. They're not really messing around with a lot of different grapes. Like in Bordeaux, you'll find Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, all these different grapes blended. Same thing with the Rhone wine, Grenache, and Syrah, and Verdet. Here in Burgundy, things are simple. The food is simple, the wine is simple. The people are definitely not simple, but they are very honest and very hardworking. And the wines here, while they may only be made with one grape for each color, the thing that separates the wines of Burgundy is where they're planted. Burgundy is a fairly small area if you look at the entire acreage of it. Trying to compare it now. I should have researched this before, but I mean, Burgundy in itself is probably only about 40 or 50 miles long, and it's very, very narrow. So everything kind of runs from north to south in Burgundy, and you can drive up and down it, in a couple hours. That said, within the individual villages of Burgundy and the different growing areas, you find a very big diversity within the soils, within the different terroirs, within even certain microclimates. So today, without getting too much into the details, today I'm going to talk about a red Burgundy. So we're talking about Pinot Noir here, a 100% Pinot Noir. If it was a white Burgundy, it would be 100% Chardonnay. Now, there are a couple other grape varietals that have sort of been grandfathered in, but since about 1935, if it's a red Burgundy, it's going to be Pinot Noir. If it's a white Burgundy, it's going to be Chardonnay. There are some exceptions, but today we're just going to stick with some general facts. So this one right here is called Morey Denis. This is a village level wine from 2016, and the producer here is Verdet. Aurelien, I'm butchering his name, I'm so sorry. Verdet. His father was a grower, probably going back generations, but his father, Alain, grew grapes within the region, specifically within the Côte de Nuit region of Burgundy. So this is in this beautiful sort of northern part of Burgundy. Now, keep in mind, Chablis is up here, and I'm definitely talking about Chablis at another time. But Chablis is sort of its own thing, part of Burgundy, but really only known for its white wines. Once you come down between the cities of Dijon, and then before you get to the Côte Chalonnaise, you have this beautiful area called the Côte d'Or, or the Golden Slopes. And this is where you find some of the best, most expensive, most age-worthy, complex wines within Burgundy. It's not to say there aren't other great regions within Burgundy, but this is where we're talking about right now, this Côte d'Or, Golden Coast, Golden Slopes. Within the Côte d'Or, you have two sections. You have the Côte de Nuit, which is centered sort of around the village of Nuit-Saint-Georges, and then you have the Côte de Beaune, which is centered around the village or the small city of large town of Côte de Beaune, Beaune, which is a beautiful historic. Both of these are beautiful historic towns, and in their own right. But surrounding those areas are very, very famous, very old vineyards. And a lot of these families have been there for generations. This is a little bit of an exception because Aurelien is fairly young. He was born in 1988, I believe. And he didn't take over his father's vineyards until about 2005, at which point his father was already a real believer in organic farming. This is something you're going to see a little bit more of in Burgundy. It's very tough there because Burgundy sees very cold winters and generally moderate summers, but in the last 10 or 15 years, the summers can get really, really hot. So you can get some crazy conditions, a lot of hail and sleet in the spring months, and you can get a lot of mildew, mold, a lot of these things that can be very damaging to vines. So this Morey Saint-Denis is a village in the Côte de Nuits. So that's in the sort of northern part of this Côte d'Or. Some of the best wines come from this area. It's sandwiched between Chambol and Gevrey-Chambertin. So both areas that you can find some extremely long-lived wines. So 100% Pinot Noir. The reds from the Côte de Nuits area, which is this is from, tend to be a little bit of fuller bodied, a little more concentrated than wines from the Côte de Beaune, which is a little bit further south. So Côte de Nuits is more known for its red wines, Nuits Saint-Georges, Gevrey-Chambertin, Chambol-Musigny, Morey Saint-Denis. And the Côte de Beaune is more known for wines like Puligny-Montrachet, Chassagne-Montrachet, white wines, and lighter reds. So here you'll see, this is a 2016, so very young, very youthful. You get a lot of these sort of bright, sort of Bing cherry colors, ruby red. And on the nose, I'm going to keep that cherry thing going because lots of really bright red cherry fruit. And that kind of carries through to the palate. The other thing I tend to get on red Burgundies that maybe make them differ a little bit from a Pinot Noir from Oregon or from New Zealand or somewhere else is you also sometimes get these sort of mushroomy notes, very earthy, wet leaves, things like that. This is an old world trait that you'll find in a lot of wines that are from France, Italy, Spain, Austria, old world, compared to a new world wine, which would be the United States, South America, New Zealand, Australia. So places where winemaking is maybe more of a more recent thing, even if that's not always the case. But old world wines do tend to be a little bit lighter, maybe a little lower in alcohol. And definitely you'll get those fruity aromas and flavors, but you may also pick up some of those earthy components that sometimes can take a little bit of warming up too if you're not used to it. This wine definitely could age for another 5-10 years. I'm drinking it a little bit early because, again, what the hell? It's crazy times. But 2006 was a great vintage, very classic. Lots of sunlight, minimal rain, and just kind of overall perfect conditions. So you're going to get a very well-balanced wine. On the palate, this just goes forever and ever. Delicious. One thing I wanted to point out, I'm actually drinking this out of a Burgundy glass. I don't use these glasses very often. I think I have about 2 of them because they're kind of clunky and big and a little bit, not everyday glasses. Normally I would be drinking, I'm not going to show you what, normally I'd be drinking out of something a little bit smaller, more all-purpose, but I just wanted to show what a true Burgundy-shaped glass looks like. It has kind of a more of a rounded fishbowl-like shape to it. Somebody also said to me in my past, the Burgundy glass more looks like a hamburger, which, okay. I think of a fishbowl, whereas a Bordeaux glass is a little bit skinnier, and less of this bulbous kind of thing. The reason why a Burgundy would be served in something like this sort of fishbowl shape is because Burgundy is made from Pinot Noir, which is a very delicate grape. And it doesn't like to be agitated too much. It doesn't like it if it's too hot, if it's too cold. And so These wines can be very delicate. So by pouring it into a glass like this, it gives a very wide surface area for the wine to kind of just very naturally and organically open up without having to swirl it around, decant it. And then it has a really small, compared to the rest of the bowl, opening, which allows the glass to kind of hold in those aromas. So when you swirl it and smell it, it just kind of holds it into this little fishbowl. Whereas something like a Bordeaux can go into a slightly narrower glass with maybe a wider opening that can be just agitated and agitated. So typically you wouldn't decant these wines, but I will say that if it's about 5 years old or so, you can decant it just for some aeration and it's not going to hurt the wine at all. The other thing that I just wanted to note was things that you could pair this wine with. So this wine, to me, I would want to pair this with something like a pasta. A typical pairing would be something like mushrooms, roasted chicken, lamb. You could also do this with a nice like roasted sea bass or like a heavier fish, monkfish, lobster, things like that. But I would stick within sort of poultry, more heavier fish dishes, and maybe lighter meats. I wouldn't, maybe you could do a hamburger with this, but I would maybe stick with something a little bit lighter like pork, lamb, poultry. That's it. But you could also do this with grilled vegetables. There's lots of options here. So this is, I could spend an hour talking about Burgundy. There's not enough time in the world to do this justice, but I really hope you can try some. Morey Saint-Denis is going to run you about $75 for a bottle. This is sort of a under the radar, up and coming wine producer. You're going to probably see a lot more of him. There are some other producers out there that are a little bit more famous. If you're going to look for something maybe in a less expensive price point, I would definitely try looking for a Bourgogne Rouge, which is going to be your basic level of red Burgundy that could come from anywhere. But again, look for a producer that you trust. This guy does make Bourgogne Rouge for about $25, and all the fruit is declassified fruit that's found around Morey Saint-Denis, Gevrey-Chambertin, Nuits Saint-Georges. So it's great fruit at a less expensive price. You can also look for things like Haute Côte de Nuit or Haute Côte de Beaune that you can find for around $30, $35. You are going to pay a little bit more for a red Burgundy than you would for, say, a Pinot Noir from somewhere else, just because it's such a small region. And each winemaker, this guy has 5 hectares of vines in the entire area of Burgundy. That's all he produces. So he produces maybe a few thousand bottles a year. It's not very much compared to a large producer who's producing tens of thousands of bottles a year. So you are going to pay a little bit more, but I guarantee you it is worth every penny, and you will enjoy this immensely. So have a great night. Cheers. It's is it Wednesday yet? I think so. Tomorrow's hump day. All right, I'm already gone. Okay. Bye.